Welcome to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk.
Hey everyone, it's Jenny Lisk, and this is episode 6 of the Widowed Parent Podcast. I'm very excited today to bring you our first show where we tackle your questions. Some fantastic questions have come in from listeners about moms raising boys after dad has died, or similarly, dads raising girls after mom has died. This includes great questions about puberty, including talking with kids about bodies and relationships and finding male mentors for boys after dad has died, or vice versa for girls. My guest, Tracey Biebel, is a clinical social worker who is a therapist and family coach and who deals extensively with these topics in her practice. We covered all sorts of ground, including Tracey's tips on dating as a single parent, taking your kids to puberty classes, connecting with them as they grow and change, and also book recommendations on these topics for all ages. A quick note, if you have young children around as you're listening, you may wish to consider whether you want them to overhear our open and matter-of-fact discussion of these topics. I hope you enjoy my discussion with Tracey Biebel. My guest today is social worker Tracey Biebel, who is joining us from her home office in Portland, Oregon. Tracey, welcome.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for having me.
So I'd like to ask you to start, if you would please just tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Yeah, so I'm a clinical social worker, which basically means I'm a therapist and coach in Portland. I work with families and kids and couples in all kinds of scenarios. I do a lot of parent work, and I do workshops, I do classes in schools and other places, and I also have a podcast, so we can talk about that later. But yeah, I just work with kids and families in all kinds of different situations.
Okay, and just for our listeners, I know you're both a biological and adoptive mom. You have a daughter and a son. You have a high schooler and a middle schooler.
I do, yeah.
And
yes, I'm a parent of a almost 13 and 16-year-old. My son is older. He's a sophomore in high school, and he is biological. And then my daughter is adopted from China. Yeah.
Very good. And so lots of personal experience as well as lots and lots of experience in coaching and practicing with families. Yep. Fantastic. Okay, well, I'm very excited you're here today. I've gotten a really great question from a listener. But I thought we'd tee up the discussion actually by reading a letter that someone wrote into the columnist Ask Amy recently. Great. And it's actually on this topic, so I'll be interested for your reaction to this letter. So this person says, "Dear Amy, I am a physician and a widower. Most importantly, I'm the father of a brilliant and deeply inquisitive 12-year-old girl. I have raised my daughter by myself since she was 6 months old. We are very close. I noticed signs that she would soon be experiencing puberty, and I knew that she would have lots of questions. I had a series of talks with her about things like hormones, body changes, romantic relationships, and safe sex. Before I started each of these conversations, I told her that if she was uncomfortable talking to her dad about this, I would be happy to arrange it so she could talk to her doctor, who's a woman, or any of the other wonderful women I've worked hard to have in her life. My daughter told me she would rather talk to me about these personal things." Okay, so far so good, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. I got a call from my daughter's health teacher at her school, furious that I had, quote, dared to discuss menstrual products with my child. The teacher called it, quote, tantamount to child abuse, that a male person, even a father, had discussed these things with a 12-year-old. Amy, I know the information I gave my girl was correct, and I gave it to her in as objective, non-sensational, and supportive way as I could. Was I out of line here? Should I have left this conversation to my daughter's pediatrician? And he signs it, Worried Widower.
Oh gosh, well, I just got super frustrated with that teacher.
Yes.
Because here's what I'm thinking. Why does the information have to be gendered?
Mm-hmm.
We are sharing information about bodies, and when we make it gendered, or we make it like mom can only talk about these things and dad can only talk about these things, we give that kiddo the message that what's going on with her body is a taboo subject, is shameful, there's something wrong with it, it's super private, and you can only talk about it with women. How is that young girl supposed to go out in the world and feel confident and comfortable with her body, chances are, odds tell us that most likely she is going to have a sexual relationship with a man. Maybe not. We don't know. Maybe she's bisexual or gay. But either way, for her, if she does have a sexual relationship with a man one day, how is she ever going to be comfortable talking to him about her body? How is she going to be comfortable with consent? How is she going to be comfortable with her own sexual pleasure and confidence in her own body when we give her a message that the things that are going on with her body are gendered and only to be talked about in the women club? I think that is just so misguided.
Yeah.
And instead of supporting this dad who is giving his child just information about her body. I mean, you know, he can talk to her about airplanes and basketball, but he can't talk to her about her body.
Right.
That's her dad.
I know. And he, as he says, they've been very close. It's been the two of them since she was 6 months old. I mean,
yeah.
It sounds to me like he is really on the ball with this and thoughtful in handling it. Well, I was pleased to see that Amy's answer was that the teacher was completely out of line.
Yes.
And that the dad was on the right track here and encouraging him to continue.
Agreed. And the other thing I think about is whether you have a one household family with a mom and a dad, or a two household family with a mom and a dad, so you've gotten two different households into cases of divorce or separation, or say you have same-sex parents and you have two dads raising a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
You need parents to be able to give kids information. I know for myself, I'm in a two-household family, so I'm divorced, and my kids share time between their dad and me, and my daughter has her period at his house.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were talking about that, she was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I can talk to dad about this. And I was like, sweetheart, dad knows about periods. You know?
Yeah.
Dad knows how bodies work, and it's just information. And so you're going to have to figure out how to talk to dad about this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I actually sent him an email saying, hey, we just had a conversation that she was feeling uncomfortable talking to you about this. If she doesn't bring it up, why don't you bring it up? And he was like, oh, yeah, on it.
Uh-huh.
I'll bring that up. And gratefully, he and I have a good relationship, and we can do that with each other. Not everyone does, but for my daughter, she gets two parents who normalize the fact that she has periods.
Right.
That she needs supplies for that, and she needs to be able to talk about it. So I think that teacher is so misguided, and we make this so gendered.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I talk to parents a lot. I'm like, moms need to talk to boys about sex and bodies, and dads need to talk to girls about sex and bodies, because we need to be comfortable talking about these things. Because again, we're going to be in sexual situations one day. Our kids are going to be, hopefully, because that's part of being a healthy human. And we want them to be able to openly talk about what's going on with their body with other people. Because that's how they're going to be healthy people. So yeah, totally misguided. This dad was totally on the right track.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I couldn't believe when I read this, and Okay. So that brings us then to a question that I got from a listener, which I think is a fantastic question, and really, practical question that I think many, a parent who's widowed may very likely face. It's on the same theme. So here's the question. She said, I'm a widowed mom of a 5th grade son. As he gets older, these are a few of the things I've been thinking about. And I think we'll just go, she's got 4 questions. We'll just go through them, and then we'll kind of circle back. And
great.
So number 1, how to give your child of the opposite sex good advice that they can relate to and use. Number 2, how to stay connected as your child is maturing and becoming more independent. Number 3, how to talk to your child of the opposite sex about body-related topics, parentheses, puberty. Number 4, how to date when your child is too old to have a babysitter and too young to be home alone for long. And then I'm going to throw in another somewhat related question from a different listener who's also a widowed mom. She said she would like tips on finding mentors for her boys. And I believe she said she has 2 or 3 boys in the middle school and high school range. So, okay, let's take these one at a time here. How about, let's start with this one. How to stay connected as your child is maturing and becoming more independent?
That is just a universal question. The world gets bigger and they're out in it more. I think the key is we have to seek them out. You know, when they were little, we were like, oh my gosh, when am I going to get some space and time? They keep taking me out for everything. And when they get older and it's our turn to seek them out. And I think some of the things are making sure that we're doing things that they're interested in. We're talking about the things they're interested in, and we're sharing more of our lives with them. You know, as we get older, we get to tell them more about what's going on with us here, so that they're like, oh, this is how this goes. You share some about you, I can share some about me, instead of just trying to dig and get things about them, things about you. You know, your feelings. I mean, we don't, you know, we obviously don't want to give them responsibility for our feelings or what's going on, but we can say things like, whew, I had a stressful day today. This happened, and then that happened. I'm really glad to just be home hanging out with you guys, right? Like little things. Or as your world gets bigger and you have more freedom to do things, go do things that are exciting for you, and then share them with your children. Ask them things they would like to do. Go, you know, have adventures with them. Go do something novel with them. Go find, you know, escape room things to do together or whatever. And if they drag their feet and really are like, I don't want to go, you're like, I know, that's all right. We're still going. I don't know if it'll be fun or not. You know, I'm a big fan of not selling something for more than it is. It's going to be fun. Don't you want to spend time with us? Hey, I want to spend time with you, and I thought we'd try this adventure. I have no idea if it'll be fun or not. Mom, it's so irritating. I know. It's all right. Let's go anyway. Right? Being silly, seeking them out in their room, and making sure that we're not just being task-oriented and logistics-oriented. Like, you need to do this thing. How's your homework? What are your things are you doing? Have you gotten all your stuff done? We tend to like get very task-oriented, especially with kids. Forget to be silly with them. Forget to tackle them on the couch. Forget to, you know, dance and be ridiculous in the kitchen with them. Forget that they're fun. And,
So
yeah.
Well, I'm as you're speaking, I'm thinking of the typical question: how was your day? Fine, right? Fine, and that shuts down, right? Yeah. So, what do you think? Like, is there?
I share something about my day instead of asking them, or you know, I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I saw the funniest thing today. Blank, blank, blank. Anything funny happened to you today?"
Oh, okay.
Or, anything super ridiculous happened at school today? Or, you know, like sharing something and then asking, but engaging first instead of putting them on the spot and requiring something of them. I try and do something.
Okay, cool. And something in there you mentioned, sharing something about how you're feeling, like my day was so frustrating. And you cautioned, though, against making them responsible for your feelings. I forget how you said it, but can you talk a little more about that and what that might look like that you should avoid?
Yeah, so you don't want to say things like, I had a really frustrating day, so I need you to be extra nice to me. No, that's not the deal, right? Instead, what you're modeling is, I had a really frustrating day today, and I'm still dealing and handling things and showing emotional maturity, right? It's not their job to make you feel better. It's not their job to do anything for you, actually. It's their job to be responsible for the things they're responsible for, but it's not their job to manage any of your emotions or take care of you or do any of that. But you can certainly share what's going on with you, and then you get to say, and it's not your job to take care of that. I'm just letting you know how my day went.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the next question here. How to give your child of the opposite sex good advice that they can relate to and use. And I'm not sure if this, because there's a separate question specifically about the puberty and body related topics. So I'm wondering if this is maybe more about, what's that?
I think those are kind of a combo question.
Okay.
Because what I would say is good advice is good advice. It's not gendered, right? I think that we can say, like, I have a female body and you have a male body, so some of the things are different, but a lot of the things are the same. You know, we run into all kinds of things about our bodies. We, you know, hear how things work, and men can understand women's bodies and how they work, and women can understand men's bodies and how they work. That doesn't have to be gendered. The experience of being in that body is not the same, but honestly, my experience of being in my female body and my daughter's experience of being in her female body aren't the same either. So I don't think we have to know exactly the same experience as someone to be able to connect with them about the experience of getting comfortable with your body as it changes, experiencing all those changes and how weird that feels, of being in that middle ground of not being a little kid anymore, but not being an adult anymore either, as your body is shifting and changing. None of that is gendered.
Right.
So I think a lot of that, we can just meet them where they are in terms of expressing these are changes that start happening. And I think a lot of times we focus so much on the physical changes, and we don't talk about how that impacts the emotions and the social stuff that goes on. And all of that we can talk about that's not about penises or vaginas. Right? Like, that's about the experience of having different feelings going on, having crushiness happen, feeling like you want to touch somebody else's body but not doing it, and all those things, right? Those aren't gendered. We make them gendered, but they're really not.
When it comes right down to it, yeah.
So yeah, I think that we can just talk about the experience of growing and changing. And then there are so many books out there that are really great. Like for younger kids, I really love that It's Not the Stork, It's So Amazing, and It's Perfectly Normal series. Those are so great for ages 4 to 10, or 10 and up, actually. There's 3 books. They're really, really good. And then some of the other books I like are the What's Happening to My Body book for girls and What's Happening to My Body book for boys. All of those are still pretty heteronormative. You have to add some pieces in for that to talk about the fuller range, because we just haven't caught up yet. And those are like older books, but they're really, really good, and they're jumping off points. And they're saying, like, here's a book with a bunch of information in it. I've read the book, so I know everything in here. Nothing in here is going to surprise me. I know all the words in here. I know all the things in here. But I thought you might want some privacy to read through it on your own. If you have any questions, nothing in here is going to surprise me.
Okay.
And so I think that's helpful. And then another book that I really like for parents is called For Goodness Sex. And it talks about, it's not about the physical stuff of changing and sex. It's not the mechanics so much as it is the experience of helping our children grow into healthy sexual beings who are comfortable managing their own pleasure and consent and talking to other people about their sex and sexuality and getting comfortable with that with themselves, and how to help kids do that. I think it's a really good one for helping us wrap our heads around how to have those conversations with kids.
Okay, and what? And I'll put all these books in the show notes for sure, because these are excellent. What? The last book that you mentioned, when your kids are what age would be the right time for you to start reading that book as a parent?
2.
Okay.
Really, right? Sex and sexuality and talking about sex and sexuality starts when we change the first diaper. We watch our face and how comfortable we are. Like, does our face scrunch up because it's gross to clean their poop and their pee, and we distract them from it? Are we okay with them putting their hands down their pants? Are we okay naming all the parts what they are, or do we call them the down theres or the private parts? I mean, they get such clear messages from us when we don't even know we're giving them about sex and sexuality and bodies. So the conversation does not start at puberty. Ideally, this conversation starts with the first diaper change.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And so what if somebody's playing catch up now? Like, what if they didn't start with the first diaper change and now they're
fine. So then I think for those kids, you read some information and you say to them, we haven't talked much about sex and bodies and all this stuff, and I feel like I'm a little behind on talking to you about it, and it might feel weird to talk about it. I'm not super comfortable talking about it, but I'm working on it because it's important for me to give you this information. I think for older kids, they feel our discomfort, so just say that we're uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, say it.
And say, that kind of neutralizes it.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable about this, but I wish I wasn't, because what I want is for this to be a comfortable topic, but with my parents it never was, so I don't know how to do this. I'm making it up as I go. To be real. I think that's the beauty of older kids. Right. They know when you're not being real, so just be real. Just say it. Just say, I am not sure exactly how to talk to you about this, but I think it's important that I do, so I'm going to try, and it might feel weird. Here goes.
And so, okay, so then your kid might have various reactions, but you could maybe group them into reluctantly going along with the discussion or flat out refusing.
Yeah. I also think this is not a one-time sit-down lecture. I call it sprinkling. We should be sprinkling in this information. I do things in my house like, oh, hey, mom PSA, condoms are still the best way to prevent sexually transmitted diseases, which we now actually call sexually transmitted infections. No, they're not STDs anymore. They're actually STIs. But anyway, condoms are important, but they're also, not perfect. And like, thanks, Mom. I'm like, okay, that's it. Any questions? No. Okay, done. Moving on.
And you're saying this at a random time, like while you're setting the table or something?
Yep, totally. Or we're in the car talking about something else. I'm like, oh, you know what just came into my mind? And I remember, you want to make sure you change your tampons regularly. You can get toxic shock syndrome. Thanks, Mom. And the boy is like, wait, what's that? Like, oh, well, that's this thing. And my daughter's like, oh my God, Mom. I'm like, this is just important information, you guys. What it says is there's never a bad time to bring it up. You don't have to wait for a perfect time. And it doesn't have to be a big, long discussion or conversation. You're sprinkling it in. So you're not overwhelming them or you with information.
And I think you're maybe saying that even if they say, oh, stop, they're still getting something.
They sure are. And the biggest thing they're getting is my mom can say these words out loud. My dad can say these words out loud. We say these words out loud at my house. Oh my God, my mom just said penis. That is super weird. Okay, all right. Right? My mom just said whatever. And that's important.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Very good. Very good. All right, here's a slight shift in gears, but this person had also asked how to date when your child is too old to have a babysitter and too young to be home alone for long.
Yeah, I get that. So I think, so I'll say I have a blog post called, Yes, Your Children Can Handle Your Dating Life, which I think might be, I'll send you the link after and you can.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
That one. Because kids can. They really can handle your dating life. And I think if you've got kids old enough to know that you're dating, you tell them you're dating. Here's what dating is, right? You define it. It's two adults spending time together to see if they'd like to spend more time together. Right? And it's a person that's more than a friend. It's somebody you might have crushy feelings for. Right? And then as you get to know them more, you might. And then I think for those kids that can't stay home alone long, if you want to go on a longer date, set up a sleepover for them at a friend's house. Right? So that they're just not home and you don't have to worry about it. And they're doing something fun too. Or you tell the person that you're dating, this is my window of time I have. Right? And you tell your kid that you're going out on a date. You're transparent about it. You don't have to tell them all the dirty details. You don't have to tell them all the stuff. And what you get to tell them is sometimes you go out on a date and you only go out with a person 1 or 2 times and you don't see them again. So if there's someone that I'm dating that I decide I've dated long enough that I'd like them to introduce you to them, I'll tell you more about them. Otherwise, I'm just going out and meeting people. And here's what dating is. Because one of the pluses of having a single parent who's dating is kids get a window into what dating looks like. One of the downsides of that is kids get a window into what dating looks like. Right? There's both sides of that, but it's really about how you handle it and how you decide to tell your kids about it. And you get to be honest about dating to a point, right? They don't need all the nitty-gritty details.
Yeah. And you mentioned if they're old enough to know that you're dating, like what? So I guess you're not going to tell your 2-year-old. Maybe you're just going to say, I'm going out for the evening. I'll be back at whatever time. But, but your 6-year-old, your 10-year-old, what are we talking about?
I mean, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you just tell them different information because the 4-year-old is going to be like, so the 4-year-old would get to know you're dating if it's someone that you're dating enough that you want to tell them, oh, this person, Tom, I'm going out with, I've talked about him before. He's the one with, remember I told you he has that white dog that's really nice named Fluffy, and we're going to go see a movie tonight. And then later, well, what color hair does he have? What kind of jacket does he wear? What does he wear sneakers? Right? Like those are the kinds of questions 4-year-olds ask. Does he have a house? Where does he live? What kind of car does he have? Right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can tell the 4-year-old those things. If you're just going out on a date, and it's with like a new person, first or second date, your 4-year-old doesn't need to know that you're going on a date. Your 4-year-old needs to know, I'm going out with a friend.
Mm-hmm. We're going out to dinner.
We're going out to dinner. Oh, what's your friend's name? Tom?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. How do you know Tom? Oh, well, we met, and now we're going out together. Oh, okay. Like,
right.
You get to tell them stuff, but you don't have to tell them all the things. And you just don't make any promises. And then at some point, if you're dating long enough that you feel like you want to introduce your kids to this person because you think it's going to go on longer, then you incrementally do that. And then, a 10-year-old gets to know more, right?
Such as?
Yeah, like a little bit more of like, well, where are you going tonight? Oh, I'm going out with this person named Tom. Well, how do you know him? Well, we've gone on a few dates. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means we're deciding whether we want to go on more dates. Do you kiss him? And then if you do, you can say, yeah, sometimes. Oh, that's weird. It feels weird when you're 10. It doesn't feel weird when you're a grown-up. Right? And it feels weird and kind of gross until your body's ready for it. But then when you're a grown-up, that kind of thing feels good. Oh, really? Yeah. And then my kids were like, or like older teenagers. I was like, totally. Or older teenagers. That's the kind of teenagers do. You get to start teaching them what your values are, what your beliefs about dating, how you go about dating, how you go about getting to know someone. Ideally, slow and steady wins the race on that, right? And so you're showing your kids how you do that. And you're showing them that you're willing to be vulnerable and take a risk to put yourself out there. And you're just going out. Really, dating can just be spending time with someone and trying something out and doing something for yourself. And, I think when you're a single parent, that's harder. And you feel like, oh, I'm going out and spending someone else instead of spending time with my kids. But, there's a time when you're ready for it that you want to do that. And you want that for yourself. And you want that kind of energy and that kind of comfort and that kind of connection with someone else. And that feeds you in a way that then gives back to your children, too. So I think, I don't think I'm sure, you can Google, is dating okay with kids? And you'll hear a million different things of advice, right? I don't think any of them are, there's, on the edges, there's right and wrong, I think. But it's like, it's all just advice and different ideas. And you have to decide what's right for you and what's right for your kids. It's an art, not a science. But I think that if you're honest and open, again, not with all the details, but I think kids need to see us be adults, and they need to see us try things and put ourselves out there and be willing to love again. And that's important that they get to see that. Yeah. Okay. And so I think, you decide how much information you give them.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. So, and then the question from the other widowed mom that had written in, the one with 2 or 3 boys in the kind of middle school, high school range, and she said she wanted some tips on finding mentors for her boys, and the father had passed away.
Yeah, I think that one is tricky, right? Because I think a lot of times it's for the kids to find some of that in teachers and coaches and other people, but then that's where you get to encourage relationships. If you have family, you get to say to uncles or brother-in-laws or grandpas or other people like, hey, would you be up for cultivating a closer relationship with, Jimmy? Because I want him to have, he doesn't have that parent, that dad figure in his life, and I'd like him to have someone close or closer in our family that could, continue that relationship. So I think that's for you, the parent, to approach someone in the family that you think could be open to it, or a close friend or someone, and say, would you be up for that? And then you say to your kiddo, hey, I was talking to Uncle Jimmy the other day, and he said he'd really like to get to know you a little bit better. Would you be up for that? Because when your kids are older, they have to consent to that relationship too.
Well, that's what I was thinking as you were talking. Like, if your kid is 4, you can say, hey, Uncle Jimmy's taking you to wherever tonight, and and you can send them along. But what about when your kid is 12, 15, and maybe there is Uncle Jimmy who says, hey, do you want to go to the baseball game? No. Hey, do you want to do this? No. Hey, how do you?
I think that's where you have the conversation with the 12-year-old and you say, hey, Uncle Jimmy's reaching out. Do you know why? No. Well, Dad died and he's not around. And it's important to have men and women in your life that are adults that you spend time with, because you get different kinds of things out of those relationships. And so Uncle Jimmy's trying. That's what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And you may not want to go, but I'd like you to give it a shot and just see. And maybe you could talk to him about something you actually want to do. If you don't want to go to the baseball game, I'll bet he'd be up for doing something else. What would you want to do? Let's talk to him. Well, Mom, I don't want to. Like, I get that, but let's think about it, right? He's your uncle and he's offering getting together. What do you not like about it? What's not fun about him? What's like, that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect.
And then they say, I'd rather just hang out with my friends.
And you get to say, okay, that's all right. And then you talk to Uncle Jimmy and you say, hey, he's kind of pushing back. What do you think? Right? You want to give it a little time? Why don't you come over this weekend? I'll invite you over. We'll all play a game. We'll go do something, right? Then it's your job to be like, hey, Uncle Jimmy, come spend more time with us. Not just with that kid, right? So then Uncle Jimmy's around more. And it's like, oh, yeah, cool. We can go do something. But you can't force it. I mean, you can force it, but usually if you force a 12 to 18-year-old kid to do something, they just dig their heels in. There's something you have to. You're the parent. You get to set limits on some things. But like cultivating a relationship with Uncle Jimmy, that's hard to force.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good.
And really, it's not the kid's job to seek that. It's Uncle Jimmy's job to cultivate that. Right? The onus is on the adult.
Right.
To meet the kid where they are, not have the kid meet Uncle Jimmy where he is. However, you can talk about the importance of that relationship and encourage the kid to open their mind to the possibility. And he's like, it's not dad. I don't need a dad. I've had one. And that's not my dad. It's like, oh, Uncle Jimmy's not trying to be your dad. You did have a dad. And, nobody's going to take that place of dad. Uncle Jimmy's not trying to take the place of dad. He just wants to be your uncle and know you better. Be closer to you, just as an uncle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Nobody's taking the place of dad. Because sometimes kids, depending on how old they were when their parent died, they can feel a loyalty. And they feel like they are not being loyal to the other parent when they are, doing dad things with somebody else.
Right.
So that's a conversation to have too. Be like, Dad actually would have wanted you to go hang out with Uncle Jimmy. He would have been fine with that. Even if Dad was still here, he'd be down with you hanging out with Uncle Jimmy. So if you're worried about that or feeling weird about that, I know Dad pretty well, and I know that wouldn't be a thing he'd be worried about.
Okay. Yeah, this is a really useful discussion. I'm very excited to bring this to the listeners because you're just full of so many wise insights, and I could keep talking to you all day about this. I do want to circle back to the puberty topic before we run out of time here. I know in my community, for example, there's a class and it's called Great Expectations, and it's run at the Seattle Children's Hospital, and I think they're in multiple cities, but I assume other cities may have similar offerings. And it's basically a puberty class, and they have a girls class and they have a boys class, two separate, totally different schedules. And they talk about changes in bodies and practical things like tampons and relationships and all kinds of things. And in addition to imparting some basic information, and they give you a book as well along with it, they're trying to really set the groundwork for the parent and child in the home then to continue the discussion. And one of the things I've observed, typically, for example, I took my daughter to the girls' class. Yeah. And it was an auditorium, and it was all like 11-year-old girls and women.
Yeah.
And I I've heard that the boys' class is the same with all dads. And they did say that, sometimes they get a mom in the boys' class or a dad in the girls' class, and that is totally fine. But it's not the norm.
And it stands out.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I'm wondering, let's say you've got now a mom raising a boy or a dad raising a girl,
yep.
Like the column we started out with in the beginning, and the other parent has died, and now your kid is 10, 11, and you've got a chance to go to the puberty class. What do?
You go.
Yeah.
You just full on go. Here's what I think about that class too. I think it's unfortunate that both parents aren't taking the kid to both classes. Like, if you've got a mom and a dad in a family, why aren't you both taking your daughter to that class? Or why aren't you both taking your son to that class? I'd like to see that expanded.
Yeah.
You're saying if both parents take the kiddo, you're saying, hey, this is important information, and both of us want you to have it, and we want you to know that both of us have this information. So then, if you've got just a mom or just a dad taking a kiddo, the gender doesn't matter.
Because the auditorium is full of moms and dads. Right.
And what that says to everybody in there, because if you're a boy or you're a girl and you're looking around and you're getting this information, then you're looking around and being like, oh, clearly this is just for girls. Oh, clearly this is just for boys. But it's not. It's about people and bodies and humans. And we want kids to be able to have that information from both parents. So that's not the norm. That's not how the class runs. That's not what's happening. I wish for that. So in the situation that it's actually in, I think you say to your kid of the opposite gender, you say, hey, I've heard about this class. It's important information, and I think we should go. I think what you'll notice when we're there is it's mostly dads bringing their sons or moms bringing their girls. And I think that's too bad, because I think that it's important information for everybody. So I'm really glad that you and I can go together. And I think I would say, even if dad were here or even if mom were here, I think I'd really like for us all to go together. So I think that I'm excited to go with you. It might feel a little weird because they're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. But I'm excited to take on the weird with you. Let's go.
Yeah.
Okay. Normalize it from your family.
Right.
And so when you go, it's not like, oh, I'm the kid whose dad is dead that's here with my mom. Instead, oh, I'm the kid whose parents would be weird and probably both come to this regardless.
Okay. All right. That's really helpful. And how about if you missed the class, the timing of the death of the parent was such that the parent already went, the kid already went with their same gender parent, and then that parent died, and now it's you and the kid. So you kind of missed the boat yourself on the class.
I would say to the kid, hey, I realized I missed the boat on that class. Do you remember stuff you learned that you think I should know?
And then they say, no, Mom, I don't want to talk about it.
And you say, I get that. But this is just important stuff to talk about. And if Dad were still here, I would ask him too, so that we could all talk about it. But he's not. So if you don't remember the stuff in the class or you feel weird talking to me about it, I probably know a lot of the stuff they talked about just because I know stuff about bodies. And so I just want to, and even when you and Dad went, your body has changed since then. And you're probably experiencing some of the things they talked about in the class that you hadn't yet. So that's something we need to catch up on. And I just want to touch base with you and let you know I'm a resource. And I say to my kids, I'm like, there might be some new words for things that I didn't know about, but I think at this point in my life, it would be hard to shock or surprise me with anything about bodies or sex. I've heard most things. So if you think you've heard something that I haven't heard before, please let me know. But I doubt it. I doubt it. So there's a lot of exciting and fun and weird stuff out there. I've probably heard of most of it.
Right.
So, I remember when my son, who's now almost 16, it was like 2 years ago, And he said something. He's like, "Oh, Cards Against Humanity." I was like, "Wait, how do you know about that game?" He's like, "I've played." I was like, "What?" I was like, "Did you know all the stuff on the cards?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "I had to look things up. You knew what they were?" Yeah. I was like, "Okay, well, you're further along than I thought you were." He's like, So I think they know stuff that we don't even know they know.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I think when we're having the conversation, I think that, for that one, you're just like, "Hey, I know you and your dad went to that. Now it's time to follow up and talk about those things. And here's some more information. Here's some books. Here's some stuff." And it's hard to shock me because I've grown up and I've heard most things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sadly, we are reaching the end of our time today. There's so much on this topic that's so fascinating, but I think that this discussion has shed light on so much of it. So thank you so much. I want to end with just one question. If you could say just one thing to widowed parents on this topic of parenting kids through puberty, what would you want to leave them with?
You have all the tools inside you to do it. You're the perfectly imperfect parent to do this with your kiddo. Just talk about it. Just say something. Just open the door. That's all you have to do.
Just start.
Just start. Yeah. Start anywhere and start awkwardly. And don't feel like you have to have it perfect because none of us do. Okay. I think that's a great place to end. Awesome. My guest today is Tracey Biebel, social worker and therapist in Portland, Oregon, who coaches parents and families in her practice there. Tracey, where can listeners find you if they would like to learn more about your work? Yeah, you can find me at practicalparentingpdx.com, practicallivingpdx.com, and on iTunes podcast at Curiouser and Curiouser Podcast. Very good. And we'll put all those links in the show notes. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Jenny. Thank you so much for speaking with us. Awesome. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Tracey Biebel as much as I did. You can find show notes and all the links at widowedparentpodcast.com. Look for episode 6. And a quick programming note, next week, which is of course Christmas week, we will be taking a break and will not have a new episode. We will be back the first Wednesday in January with a brand new show for you. I'll be sharing my interview with Austin Shoecraft, who is now in his 20s and whose dad died when he was 11. We had a fascinating discussion about his perspective and reflections on his experience, so I hope you'll join me on January 2nd to catch that. I hope you enjoyed today's format where I tackled listener questions with my guest. So many of you have written in with such interesting topics, and I'm looking forward to bringing you more guests to address more of your questions in January. And of course, I'm still taking your questions for future shows. The easiest way to submit a question is probably to leave a message in our voicemail box at 669-257-3434 with a brief comment on what is your biggest challenge as a widowed parent. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep smiling.
Thank you for listening to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk. Connect with us on social media and at widowedparentpodcast.com.